I spent 5 years being a devoted stepfather, but my wife's child constantly disrespected me. During a dinner I paid for, he mocked. Real dads don't cry when they're insulted. My wife chuckled. I wiped a tear, then quietly handed her divorce papers and a receipt for everything I funded. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy who walked out on his family. When I married Melanie, I told myself I was in it for the long haul, for better or worse, through every difficulty life threw at us. I meant it. I wasn't naive. I knew marrying a woman with a child wouldn't be easy, but I had no idea how much I would sacrifice trying to hold on to something that was never really mine to begin with. I spent 5 years trying to be a good stepfather to Noah, her son from her previous marriage. I paid for his clothes, his school, his vacations. I tried to bond with him, took him to games, helped with homework when he'd let me. And every single time, he pushed me away. I told myself it would get better, that one day he'd appreciate the effort. But some people don't appreciate anything. I think back to the first time I met Noah. He was 11, skinny as a rail, with dark brown hair that fell into his eyes. He looked me up and down, then turned to his mother and asked, "Is he going to be my new dad or just one of the ones who leave?" That should have been my warning. But Melanie had laughed it off, ruffled his hair, and said, "Be nice, honey. Wes is just a friend." Except I wasn't. Within a year, we were engaged. And by the time I moved in, the resentment had already started to fester. The first few months were rough. Noah would barely acknowledge me, refusing to eat dinner if I made it, locking himself in his room whenever I was home. I gave him space. I figured he needed time to adjust. But time didn't make a difference. Noah never warmed up to me. By 13, he was openly hostile. At 14, he'd mock me under his breath, call me Melanie's husband instead of my name, roll his eyes whenever I spoke. By 15, he stopped pretending to be polite altogether. "You're not my dad," he told me once over breakfast. "Stop acting like you are." I never tried to be. His biological father, Aaron, was still around, but just barely. He'd show up once or twice a year, play the role of fun dad for a weekend, then disappear again. No financial support, no real presence. Just the occasional text, a half-hearted promise to visit, and then radio silence. But despite all of that, Noah still worshipped him. And me? I was just the guy paying the bills. I should have left sooner. But when you love someone, you make excuses. You tell yourself that things will change, that the effort will eventually pay off, that if you just hold on a little longer, everything will fall into place. I held on for 5 years. Then one dinner changed everything. It was a Saturday night when it all came to a head. I had just gotten a decent bonus from work. Nothing crazy, but enough to splurge a little. So I decided to do something nice for my family. I made reservations at Bavette's Steakhouse, one of the best spots in Chicago. Pricey, but I figured why not. I told Melanie and Noah to dress nice. Noah, of course, groaned about it. "Why do I have to go?" he muttered, slumping against the couch when I told him. "It's just some lame old people restaurant." Melanie sighed. "Noah, stop. Wes is trying to do something nice." For himself, Noah shot back. "He just wants to feel like a big man paying for dinner." I swallowed down the irritation rising in my throat and forced a smile. "Just get ready, okay?" He did, eventually, though you'd think I was forcing him to march to his own execution. He showed up to the restaurant in sneakers and a wrinkled hoodie, despite the fact that I had told him it was a nice place. I let it slide, like I always did. We sat down, ordered drinks, water for Noah, wine for Melanie, a bourbon for me. The waiter handed us menus, and within seconds, Noah made a face. "This place is so pretentious." He gestured at the menu. "Who pays this much for a steak?" I did. I ignored the comment and ordered for everyone. Noah didn't even look up when I told the waiter he'd have the $120 ribeye. I knew he liked steak, even if he refused to admit I knew anything about him. The first 20 minutes were awkward but manageable. Melanie scrolled on her phone. Noah chewed with his mouth open, tapping away at his screen. I sat there, sipping my drink, pretending not to notice how little either of them wanted to be there. Then Noah spoke. "So, guess what?" he said, smirking at his mother. "Dad's taking me to Six Flags next weekend." I paused mid-drink. Aaron, the same guy who couldn't be bothered to text him back for months, was suddenly playing the role of father? Melanie perked up. "Oh, that's great, honey." Noah's smirk widened. "Yeah, real dads take their kids out for dinner. Real dads don't just pay the bill and expect respect." My stomach twisted. Melanie stiffened, but she said nothing. Noah wasn't finished. He leaned back, staring at me like he was daring me to react. "And real dads don't cry when they get insulted." Then, Melanie laughed. It wasn't loud, just a small chuckle, barely there. But it was enough. Something inside me shattered. I had spent years bending over backward for this family, trying to be what they needed, trying to be enough. And in return, I was a joke to them. Slowly, I reached into my jacket pocket. I pulled out a stack of papers and set them on the table. Melanie frowned. "What's this?" "Divorce papers." My voice was calm, steady. The air changed. Noah's smirk faded. Melanie blinked at the papers like they weren't real. Wes, stop being ridiculous. I wasn't. I reached into my pocket again and pulled out another piece of paper, a receipt, a breakdown of every major expense I had covered in the past 5 years. The mortgage, the groceries, the school fees, the trips, the medical bills. I slid it across the table. Since real dads pay for dinner, I suggest you and your son go half on the bill. Noah's mouth opened slightly. Wait, what? I turned to Melanie. You laughed, Mel. I exhaled. You laughed. She was silent. I stood, grabbed my coat, and looked at Noah one last time. Real dads might not cry, I told him. But real men know when to walk away. And I did. I walked out of Bavette's that night with my heart pounding in my chest. The cold Chicago air hit me the moment I stepped outside, but I barely felt it. My hands were shaking, not from anger, not even from sadness. Just from the weight of it all. The weight of finally making a decision I should have made years ago. I didn't turn back. I didn't pause to see if Melanie or Noah would follow me. I just walked. I didn't go home. I couldn't. Instead, I found myself at O'Malley's, a small bar I used to go to before I got married. It was a little hole-in-the-wall place, nothing fancy, just old wooden floors, dim lighting, and a bartender who didn't ask questions. Exactly what I needed. I slid onto a bar stool, nodded at the bartender. Bourbon. Neat. He poured without a word. I downed the first glass too fast, feeling the burn in my throat, but it wasn't enough to dull the noise in my head. 5 years. 5 years of paying for everything, of showing up, of trying. 5 years of watching Melanie turn a blind eye every time Noah disrespected me. 5 years of convincing myself that love meant enduring. What a joke. My phone buzzed on the bar. Melanie. I let it ring. Then, a minute later, another text. Then another. I sighed, rubbing a hand down my face before finally checking my phone. Melanie, we need to talk. Melanie, where are you? Melanie, Wes, please. I stared at the screen for a long time before finally typing out a response. I meant what I said. I hit send. A second later, 3 dots popped up, then disappeared, then popped up again. Finally, a new message. Melanie, can we at least talk at home? Please. Home. The word hit me in a way I didn't expect. Because suddenly, I realized I didn't know if I had a home anymore. The place I had been living in for the past 5 years felt less like mine than the barstool I was sitting on right now. But maybe that had always been the case. I exhaled slowly, debating whether to respond, whether I even wanted to. Then, before I could decide, my phone buzzed again. But this time, it wasn't Melanie. It was Noah, and the message made my stomach turn. I stared at my phone screen, unsure if I even wanted to read it. Noah had never texted me before, not once in 5 years. If he needed something, he asked Melanie. If she wasn't around, he just ignored me until she was. So why now? The 3 dots danced on the screen. Then, finally, a message popped up. Noah, so that's it? You're just leaving? I took a slow sip of bourbon, rolling the message over in my head. Something about it pissed me off. Not because he was upset, because he wasn't. I knew exactly what this was. Noah wasn't texting me because he cared. He wasn't texting me because he felt bad. He was texting me because, for the first time ever, he realized I wasn't coming back. I didn't reply. Instead, I flagged down the bartender for another drink and slid my phone back onto the bar. I let him sit with that silence. Another minute passed. Another buzz. Noah, wow. Guess Mom was right about you. I clenched my jaw. I didn't know what right meant. Right that I'd eventually get fed up? Right that I wasn't his real dad? Right that I'd do exactly what his actual father had done, walk away? I had spent years trying not to be Aaron. I had paid for everything, showed up, taken every insult thrown my way. And now, when I was finally done, I was suddenly just as bad as the deadbeat who hadn't earned the title of father. I gripped my glass tighter, knuckles white. For a second, I thought about responding, telling him the truth, that he and his mother had made this choice for me a long time ago, that I had tried, and tried, and tried, and I was done trying. But what was the point? I exhaled through my nose, set my glass down, and pushed my phone away. I wasn't playing this game. Not tonight. Not anymore. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the bartender to give me a look that said he was wondering if I needed a ride home. Home. That word again. Did I even have a home anymore? The more I thought about it, the more I realized maybe I never did. Because a home wasn't just 4 walls and a roof. A home wasn't just a place where you slept at night. A home was where you felt safe, where you felt wanted, where you could exist without having to fight for your place in it. And that house, the one I had been paying for, the one with Melanie and Noah in it, that wasn't home. It was never home. My phone buzzed again. I sighed, dragging it toward me, expecting more of the same from Noah or Melanie. But it wasn't either of them. It was Aaron. And his message made my blood go cold. I sat up straighter, my fingers tightening around the phone. Aaron. Why the HLL was Aaron texting me? I hadn't spoken to him once in 5 years. He had never reached out, never cared about my existence, just like he barely cared about Noah's. So what the HLL did he want now? The message was short. Aaron, heard you walked out. Guess you finally figured it out, huh? I read it 3 times, my pulse rising with each pass. Figured what out? That I was wasting my time. That no one never wanted me there. That Melanie had been letting it happen. My thumb hovered over the screen. I wanted to ignore him. I should have ignored him. But something about that text got to me in a way I wasn't ready for. I exhaled sharply and typed back. What are you talking about? The dots popped up immediately, like he'd been waiting for me to respond. Aaron, you really think I was the bad guy in all this? I blinked. What the HLL was that supposed to mean? For 5 years, I had been sold a story, a very simple one. Aaron was a deadbeat. Aaron didn't show up. Aaron was the reason Noah was so messed up. And now this Aholi was acting like he was some kind of victim? I clenched my jaw and typed back. You abandoned your kid. You don't get to play the victim now. A pause. Then, Aaron, yeah, that's what she told you, huh? A chill ran down my spine. Because something about that message felt different. Off. I didn't want to keep engaging, but I couldn't stop myself. I had spent years hating this guy, blaming him for everything. But now, for the first time ever, I wasn't sure if I even knew the whole story. I hesitated, then typed. What exactly are you trying to say? This time, Aaron took longer to respond. I watched the dots appear, disappear, then reappear. And when his message finally came through, it felt like a fist to the gut. Aaron, you ever wonder why she never pushed me for child support? Why she never took me to court? I froze. Because the truth was, I had wondered. Melanie had complained about Aaron plenty of times. How he was irresponsible. How he never kept his promises. How he wasn't fit to be a father. But she had never taken legal action. Never fought for a cent. She had let him disappear without a fight, without anything. And that had never quite sat right with me. I swallowed hard and typed back. Tell me. Aaron's response came instantly. Aaron, not over text. Meet me. I stared at the message, my heart pounding. Because I knew, whatever he was about to tell me was going to change everything. I should have ignored him. I should have put my phone down, finished my drink, and let whatever Aaron had to say fade into the background. But I didn't. Instead, I found myself typing back. Where? A few seconds passed. Then, Aaron, 24-hour diner on West Randolph. Half an hour. I stared at the message, my gut twisting. Was I really about to do this? Sit face to face with the man I had spent 5 years resenting? The same man Noah worshipped despite barely showing up? But something about that text, about the way he worded it, made it impossible to ignore. Melanie had never pushed for child support. Never took him to court. Why? I wanted answers. I needed them. I tossed some cash on the bar and slid off the stool. The night air hit me hard as I stepped outside, my breath visible in the cold. The streets were quieter now, the city winding down. I pulled my jacket tighter around me and started walking. West Randolph was only a few blocks away. I could have taken an Uber, but I needed the time to think. By the time I reached the diner, I wasn't sure if I was ready for whatever Aaron was about to say. But it was too late to back out now. I spotted him immediately, sitting alone in a corner booth, hands wrapped around a coffee mug. He looked older than I expected. Tired. A little rough around the edges, like a man who had seen better days. His eyes flicked up as I approached, and a smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. Well, the man of the hour. I slid into the booth across from him, ignoring the sarcasm. Talk. Aaron took a sip of coffee, watching me over the rim of his mug. Straight to business. I respect that. I clenched my jaw. I didn't come here to waste time. He exhaled slowly, setting the mug down. All right, Wes. You want to know why Melanie never took me to court? Why she let me walk away without a fight? I didn't answer. I just waited. Aaron leaned forward slightly, his voice lowering. Because I had leverage. A chill ran down my spine. What kind of leverage? His smirk faded. The kind that could have cost her everything. My stomach tightened. Stop talking in circles. What the HLL are you saying? Aaron held my gaze for a long moment. Then, finally, he said the words that would change everything. Melanie situated on me. I stared at him, barely breathing. Aaron sat back, watching my reaction. Yeah, thought that might get your attention. My pulse pounded in my ears. That doesn't make sense. She always said you were the one who, that I was the Aholi? The deadbeat? The guy who just walked away. He let out a dry chuckle. Of course she did. That's the version she needed you to believe. I shook my head. Noah would have known. He would have. Aaron cut me off. Noah was 6. You think Melanie was going to let him know the truth? She controlled the narrative, Wes. She made me the villain because it was easier that way. I swallowed hard. If that's true, why didn't you fight for custody? Aaron sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. Because by the time I found out, she had already set everything in motion. She told Noah I left. She poisoned him against me before I even had a chance to explain. You think a 6-year-old understands that kind of betrayal? No. He just knows what his mother tells him. My hands curled into fists under the table. And the leverage? Aaron hesitated. Then, in a voice so low I almost didn't hear it, he said, Noah might not be mine. The world stopped. I blinked. What? Aaron exhaled. I found out she CHA'd, but by then, Noah was already born. There was doubt. Enough doubt that I thought about getting a paternity test. But Melanie, He stopped, shaking his head. She lost it. Told me if I ever questioned it, she'd make sure I never saw him again. And by that point, she already had him convinced I was the bad guy. My mind was spinning. Noah might not be Aaron's. Aaron leaned forward. I didn't fight because I knew I couldn't win. And Melanie knew it too. That's why she never took me to court. She didn't want me to dig too deep. She just wanted me gone. I sat there, my breath coming too fast, too shallow. Because if this was true, if there was even a chance it was true, then I had spent 5 years supporting a child who might not even be Melanie's ex-husband's son. A kid who had hated me while I paid for everything. I suddenly felt sick. Aaron, watch me carefully. I didn't tell you this to screw with your head. I told you because you deserve to know the truth before you make the biggest decision of your life. I swallowed hard, my pulse hammering. Because for the first time since walking out of that restaurant, I realized this wasn't just about leaving. This was about finally seeing the truth. And I had no idea what the HLL to do next. I sat there, gripping the edge of the table, my head spinning. Noah might not be Aaron's. Which meant what? That he was someone else's? That Melanie had lied not just to Aaron, but to me, to Noah, to everyone? I wanted to call bullshit. I wanted to believe this was just Aaron trying to shift blame, trying to rewrite history to make himself look better. But something about the way he said it, the way his voice dipped just a little, the way his fingers clenched around his coffee cup like he was reliving it all over again, made me pause. What if he was telling the truth? I swallowed hard. You ever get the test? Aaron exhaled. No, why not? He scoffed. Because I was stupid. Because part of me wanted to believe he was mine. And by the time I got my head straight, it was too late. Melanie had her hooks in him. If I pushed for a test, I would have lost what little chance I had left. I ran a hand over my face. Jesus. Aaron leaned forward. Look, man, I'm not telling you this to get back at her. That ship sailed a long time ago. But if you're finally waking up and seeing things for what they really are, you might want to start asking some questions. I let out a slow breath, my pulse hammering in my ears. If Noah's not yours, then whose is he? Aaron shook his head. I don't know, and I don't think she does either. That hit me harder than I expected. Because if that was true, then Noah had been lied to his entire life. He worshipped a father who might not even be his real father. He hated me for trying to be a parental figure, but the man he put on a pedestal had walked away without even checking if he was really his. And Melanie? She had let it happen. She had let Noah grow up resenting the wrong man. She had let me step into a situation built on half-truths and manipulation. I had spent 5 years breaking my back for a family that had never been real in the first place. I clenched my fists under the table. So what the HLL am I supposed to do with this, Aaron? He sighed. That's up to you, man. But if I were you. He met my eyes, his expression unreadable. I'd get that test. The words lodged in my throat. Because as much as I didn't want to admit it, I already knew he was right. I didn't sleep that night. After I left the diner, I wandered the streets of Chicago, my mind a hurricane of thoughts I couldn't untangle. A DNA test. The idea dug into my brain like a splinter. Would it even matter at this point? I was already done. I had already handed Melanie the divorce papers. I had already walked away from Noah, from the life I had tried so hard to build. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized it did matter. Not for Noah. Not for Melanie. For me. I needed the truth. I needed to know if I had spent 5 years raising another man's child while being treated like I was worthless. I needed to know just how deep Melanie's lies went. So the next morning, I made a decision. I called my lawyer. Getting the DNA test wasn't hard. Noah wasn't speaking to me, but Melanie? She was still reeling from my sudden exit. She wanted to talk things through, to figure out where we went wrong. She had no idea I already knew exactly where things had gone wrong. So when I told her I wanted to make sure Noah was financially secure in the future and needed some medical records to finalize things, she didn't even question it. She handed over a copy of Noah's old medical reports, including one that had a sample of his DNA on record. From there, it was easy. I submitted my own sample and waited. And when the results came back, I wasn't even surprised. Probability of paternity, 0%. Noah wasn't Aaron's. And he damn sure wasn't mine. I stared at the paper for a long time, my hands steady. I thought I'd feel rage. I thought I'd feel devastated. But all I felt was calm. Because now, I had everything I needed. And it was time to act. I had spent 5 years funding their lifestyle. The house. I had paid for it. My name was on the mortgage. The cars. Both in my name. Noah's school, his trips, his expensive hobbies. All on my dime. And now that I was gone, Melanie was realizing just how much I had been covering. She had no savings. No financial backup. She had spent the last 5 years using my money like it was an infinite resource, because she had assumed I'd always be there. So I made sure she felt it. Every single bit of it. First, I called the bank and froze the joint accounts. Then, I contacted my lawyer and had him start the process of removing my name from the house. Melanie had always insisted it was her home. Fine. Let her figure out how to keep it. The car she drove? Gone. It was in my name, so I sold it. She could find her own way around. The credit cards? Canceled. The bills? forwarded to her. Everything she had taken for granted, gone overnight. But the best part? Noah's tuition. I had been paying for his private school in full. No loans, no assistance. Just direct payments from me to the school. So I called the administration and pulled out. Melanie got the notification a few days later. And that was when the panic really set in. I was at my lawyer's office when she called. I let it go to voicemail. Then she called again. And again. Finally, I answered. Her voice was shaking. Wes, what the HLL is going on? The bank says the accounts are frozen. Noah's school says his tuition hasn't been paid. What are you doing? I leaned back in my chair, letting her panic wash over me. Handling my responsibilities. This isn't funny, Wes. You're being petty and cruel. You know we can't afford any of this without you. I smiled. Not my problem. Not your. She said in a breath, her voice rising. Noah's going to get kicked out of school. Do you even care what this does to him? I let the silence stretch, long enough for her to really feel it. Then, finally, I said, why don't you call his real dad? Dead silence. She stopped breathing. I could hear it. The way the world just dropped out from under her. And then, in a barely audible whisper, what did you say? I pulled out the DNA results from my folder, running my fingers over the paper. I know, Melanie. Wes, I know Noah isn't Aaron's. I know he isn't mine. I know you've been lying to everyone for years. So if you're looking for someone to clean up this mess. I paused, savoring the moment. Find his father. She made a sound, a choked, stunned gasp. Then, the real meltdown started. She begged. She cried. She swore it wasn't what I thought. She said we could work through this. I hung up. By the time the divorce was finalized, Melanie was drowning. She lost the house. She had to downgrade apartments, fast. She ended up pulling Noah out of private school and moving to a cheaper district. And Noah? He was livid. Not at me, at her. When he found out the truth, he lost it. The boy who had spent years disrespecting me, taking me for granted, treating me like I was disposable, he suddenly had to face the fact that the one person he trusted most had been lying to him all along. And as for me, I walked away. No more fighting. No more trying to be someone I was never going to be in their eyes. Just freedom. And the best part? Melanie would have to live with the consequences of her own lies. Forever.